nowadays I'm 100% convinced that is the future. That is the future, and that more teachers need to shift into this kind of practice and envision a classroom where they're servant leaders, but that everything is student driven. And there is opportunity for feedback and revision instead of rushing through things. Because they're focused on the outcome. The focus should be on the process and the interactions that take place inside the classroom.
Welcome to episode 21 of the Learn and Unlearn podcast. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Laura White. Laura has been a teacher for over 20 years and loves teaching teenagers in a self-organized, transparent, and collaborative learning environment. She has gained versatile training on Agile leadership and is currently collaborating with Leaf.org to bring agility into the classrooms. Let's get started. Welcome, Laura. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us how you got started teaching Agile in school.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that my role inside the classroom is a facilitator. So before I came in contact with Agile, I already had the right mindset. I wanted student-driven activities and projects. And one day I was going through LinkedIn and I stumbled upon Leaf's website, Learning Educational Agility Enterprise, and I contacted Jeff. And I started collaborating with him back in August last year. So first I was a learner. I had to learn everything about Agile, the values, the principles, the pillars. And once I embraced that, I said, well, I'm ready to apply it in the classroom. And then I became a practitioner. And that's when I came in contact with Kanban Zone, the Kanban board that I started using in the classroom with them. So when we started class back in March, because here the school calendar is from March till December, the first thing I emphasized was collaboration. So they were using the collaborative boards and a lot of transparency. Everybody had access to everybody else's ideas and proposals. So I started working on the idea of us as a community reporting on what everybody understood and working on the idea of setting an intention for each meeting. And then my next project involved using the Kanban Zone board. The learning flow was the new concept I introduced in the classroom, right? Like when you pull one card from one from one lane to another, right? They got the idea that everything was gradual, that everything was in small chunks, and that everything was discussed as a team, right? That there was face-to-face communication, how one of them saw it, how the other one saw it. So because I want them to understand that properly, I started modeling it for them. I would share screen the first 10 minutes of class. We had that daily routine. It was always the same event, the daily meetup, where I would suggest a group to volunteer and share where they were in their journey, what they were working on, and if they had any issue that they would like to bring up for the rest of the group to pitch in. So I would have the screen up and I would start looking at their cards and asking them coaching questions, Like, what have you accomplished? What served you that you would like to continue using? What didn't serve you that you would like to drop? When do you see yourself doing this? Or what do you need to get there? Those kind of questions, So that they, as peers, would eventually coach themselves, right? So the idea was for them to tell me how they saw it. Like, how do you see yourself this being viable? What would be good enough for you to move that card to the next lane? And I saw how they were engaging with the board very well. And it was very relaxing as a teacher to just give them those 10 minutes for daily meetup and then get them into their breakout rooms, but then go into those breakout rooms and just listen to them. Because I would always bounce back those questions. It would be, teacher, is this okay? I don't know how you ask your team members if they think it's okay. Ask their opinion. So I would just listen. And then they would feel like, oh, so somebody wants to hear what I have to say. They would sit properly and go like, oh, so, well, I think this and this. So I felt a lot more comfortable, like releasing that control and giving it back to them.
Interesting. You mentioned that you got started or you learned Agile last year. So,
Yeah.
how was your personal experience?
Well, I had a project-based learning background. For me, those standardized tests, the pressure of memorizing and getting, the grade through a paper and pencil assessment was no longer an option. It hadn't been an option for several years. I was practicing blended learning, which means they would log at their own pace at home whenever they wanted and look at the material and work on it. So it was like gradual, it was scaling. By the time I got to those meetings, every day I would just go through my notes and say, well, this is something that I see myself doing, right? So the idea of collaboration, transparency, face to face communication, focus. I said, I already do this in class. Whenever I walk into the classroom, they know exactly what is expected from them, no? The meetings, the listening, respecting other people's opinions, and then reporting. Tell me what you did today. Show me, okay, where are you stuck? That was already happening. So it was a practice that was I had the confidence that worked. And when I started going to the meetings, I said, well, all right, I'm already doing this. I just hadn't given it a name, but I was already agile. I was already flexible. I was already open to changes. It was like, teacher, this doesn't work. Teacher, we need help. Teacher, we have a problem. It was like, okay, let's see. And it was okay to have a problem. It was okay if it didn't work out. That was already an option. So it was from August all the way to, I would say, January, February, that it was a lot of discussion, a lot of listening. Jeff is an excellent coach and mentor. So it was a lot of revising about my role as a leader, as a servant leader. Okay, how do I see myself doing this in the classroom now that I'm going to incorporate a new tool, which was the Kanban board, no? So it all starts with me as the teacher, as the leader, right? The servant leader, the one that is going to be comfortable mentoring and coaching, and how willing I was to just give up my personal power and release it, let them empower themselves, be self-managing, self-governing, and it worked out very well.
Wonderful. Can you also describe how a typical day or a sprint looks like?
So we have we meet 3 times a week, and every time we meet, we have a daily stand up where the students first meet as a class. Those first 10, 15 minutes before I get them into their breakout room are as a community, So I ask, it could be 1 or 2 teams to volunteer and show their board, and I'll ask them where they are on their journey and what needs to be updated, that day in terms of cards, right? We look at the cards together. I ask them, what is the minimal viable product, right? How will you know you're getting there? And then we move. I first I show them how to use the board, right? To pull the cards from one, like they're swimming. I would tell them it's a flow, right? You're swimming, you're moving from one lane to the other. So as a team, they discuss, right? When are we ready to move it to the next stage? When are we done refining, and when can we start planning? Or when is it time to discuss how we manage risk? How will we know we're getting there? So it's about asking, those powerful questions at the beginning, and the rest are just watching, because, I have that very ingrained in me, modeling, but then it's not prescriptive. It's not, this is the way you should do it. This is a suggested way to do it, no? And that then you will decide if this works for you or not. So I always repeat the same routine. Different teams, whoever wants to participate. If any team is stuck, then we go through, questions. If they can identify their bottleneck, they look at their, work in progress, right? How can you shift those cards into the next lane? And basically, they understand that it's a flow. It's a flow, right? And it's a team activity where there's a shared leadership. Everybody gets to participate as a team because they're focused. They have a clear sense of purpose. So, and that comes from refining, which is the first step that they cannot skip. And if they're not sure, they can always consider if their outcome is still valid, if that is still current, or if that's something that they need to revise, which is also okay. Because nothing is carved in stone. That's the most important thing, no? Like 2020 taught us that nothing is carved in stone, and they have to learn. My students understand that it can be sometimes ambiguous or unpredictable, right? Oh, we can't find what we're looking for. We've been searching and we can't find that info, right? What else could you do? Or one of our classmates didn't show up, all right? So what's the next step? How can you manage this? And it's uncomfortable at times for them. But my goal as a teacher was to have them gain autonomy, to stop texting the teacher. Teacher, can you come into a room? I will go into the room. Sure, I will go into the room. And then, teacher, what should we do? All right, have you asked your classmates? Have you asked them and explored their options, what options they can bring to the table? Oh, and they hadn't considered that maybe the person next to them could have the answer. So this is the mindset that I want to install in the routine, that they actually own the answers. And I'm just there, as a servant leader, helping them in case they get really stuck. But most of the time, they know what to do. They already know what to do, right? Because it's about
Exactly.
collaborating.
Exactly. So your role is more like a facilitator, I would say.
Absolutely. I'm more comfortable with that. Because I sense when I'm the protagonist, when I'm taking too much of a role, and I will immediately bounce the questions back to them, right? I can ask the class, okay, so who can help this team with their question, right? And I like peer feedback a lot, more than everybody, eyes on the teacher, like, oh, let's see what she says. No. I say, I could tell you, but I would prefer to hear what your peers have to say. It's about demonstrating over just, oh, this is what you have to do. Go back to the document, which is just accumulating information. It's exploring, it's experimenting. What would it look like if you did it like this? Or tell me more about this. No, tell me what it looks like in your vision. What would good enough be? And they can always come back and say, no, you know what? We thought it was better this way, which is part of the testing, no? It's like, yeah, we tried it. We demonstrated it. We didn't like it. So we're going to go back. That's also possible. The important thing is that there's flexibility.
Wonderful. How has the feedback been from the students? Do they like it, and what do they find helpful here?
Well, whenever I get them into the breakout rooms, okay, I go one by one into each of the breakout rooms. Hey guys, how are you? And I have their board up. So tell me about this. And I can sense that they are aligned, which is very important to me, And I'm sensing an environment of ease, of because before we started the Kanban board, every time I finished a project, they had a self-assessment survey. And something that came up a lot was that they had to prioritize their mental health, which was really surprising. No? I asked them, okay, what is getting in the way of your mental health? And they said, I'm stressing a lot. I'm too worried about time. I always think I'm not going to finish on time. And I was like, that's interesting. No? So here they were on time and they liked that they could see that it was feasible, right? That their little, what they set out to do that day was small chunks, right? Like in small, very small chunks that made it a lot more enjoyable. And I did a survey at the end of this last project we did. It was interesting that around 50% of the students answered the survey and returned it to me. The other 50% didn't. So that gives me an idea of how uncomfortable self-assessment is to them, right? One of them actually asked me if this was for a grade or if it was going to affect her grade because it was a girl. And it was, okay, so this is something we need to explore, right? These students are not used to self-assessment. Huh? Those that did answer the survey, which was mostly how they did on each of the different steps of the process, the refining, the planning, the managing risk, the collaborating, demonstrating, and reflecting. They were very confident. We had a chart. It could show up a chart, and that they were over 90%. They believed that they had actually accomplished most of it. So I have 50% of my students believing that they actually defined their goals, that they actually worked well, as a team, and that they were able to reflect on their work, which I think is a good number, considering that this was the first time we did it as a class, the Kanban board and the whole routine. It was the first time I named, for example, what transparency was, or what they said. Okay, yeah, it makes sense, right? Like we discussed the policies at the beginning. When are we going to celebrate something, or what is the policy for peer feedback? Okay, they found that interesting also.
Interesting. And Agile is not just limited to the classroom. This will help them with their personal lives as well. And for example, doing their homework or planning their tasks at home. It will help in all aspects of life.
Yes, before I introduced the Kanban board. When I did my self-assessment survey, the last one, I asked them what strategies they had included in this last project that had helped them. And most of them said it really helped me to write things down. And that for me was pivotal because it said, okay, so they need to see it. They need to actually name it, list it. And that was very important. It told me they were ready. They were ready for the board, right? So yes, I also agree. My 11th graders, I tell them, listen, this is something that you're going to know now and you're going to apply when you start university and your work, you start working. This is project management right here, right? And it's immediate how they pick it up. They go like, oh, so I can actually apply this in life. I like that because they're potentially becoming earners. They will start their own business or they will work for someone and they will be accountable for that. And they can always go back and say, well, this is the stage I'm in. This is what I need to get done. This is how much time I need for this. And understanding flexibility,
Very true. This will help them in areas beyond their education.
Absolutely. It's about managing their resources, their time, managing conflict, and knowing that they got it, that they might fail. They might fail because it's about also saying, well, I could have done this differently, or, maybe I didn't show up 100%. But it's like, okay, so next time, what are you going to do differently?
Good. Tell us about your future plans.
Well, I want more autonomy in the classroom, right? I sense that even though the incidents in which I had to step in did decrease with this last project where the Kanban board was there, I want them to stop texting me on the weekend or emailing me like, teacher, this is what we did. Is this good enough? Teacher, is this what you wanted? I'm still getting those emails. So, and I want that to a minimum. So that's going to be my next goal. Continue using the Kanban board. Continue working on their shared leadership. Right? I'm going to lead by example. And I'm going to continue reinforcing the mindset and the principles of Agile. Because I think that they won't want to go back to the traditional classroom, that teacher-centered classroom where there's the PowerPoint and there's the standardized test. I don't think that once they have tried this, I don't believe they will want to go back. Even if we go back into the classroom, I'm looking for more project-based learning, assessment, and things that will scale into the community also. My next goal is to have parents know more about this and the school leadership know more about the Kanban board and what the students are doing inside the classroom.
Yes, that's a very important point that you brought up. Parents and the school management,
Mm-hmm.
unless they also realize the importance and the benefits of this, children might not be able to get the full benefits because they might face some resistance from both of these sides.
Exactly. And it's a transformation, but it started with me first as a learner and then as a practitioner. And then I brought it to the kids, and now I'm confident that I can share it with parents and the school leadership now that I know that it works.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, August last year, I had no idea what Agile was. And nowadays I'm 100% convinced that is the future. That is the future, and that more teachers need to shift into this kind of practice and envision a classroom where they're servant leaders, but that everything is student driven. And there is opportunity for feedback and revision instead of rushing through things. Because they're focused on the outcome. The focus should be on the process and the interactions that take place inside the classroom.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for sharing a case study on implementing Agile in education. And as you said, more and more teachers, more and more schools need to adapt to the new way of learning. And Agile would help a lot.
Well, thank you for contacting me and for giving me this space to share my experience with it. There's always room for improvement, but these kids are in so much need of protagonism. They want to be taken into account, and they want to be able to communicate their own personal and learning outcomes and be visible, because it's about visibility. It's about becoming visible to their peers, to their teachers, and even to themselves.
Exactly. Thank you, Laura.
All right, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. I would love to connect with you and invite you to check out the description section for my social media profiles. Let's meet in the next episode.